started in 2 minutes.
Perfect.
So I just gave everybody a 5-minute warning, so maybe 3 minutes. Okay.
No, not quite.
There's some food outside if you're hungry.
Okay. I saw that.
I don't know where Chris is. Gordon.
Oh, he's outside.
Oh, he is?
Did I find him?
Yeah. I can look at him.
Oh, I got it.
Okay, I need help with the mics.
Yeah, I just saw him outside.
Okay, thanks.
Oh.
Press and hold.
I was doing that. Wasn't. Oh, now it's working. That's pretty loud, or is that okay? It's a little loud. Hello, hello? I think that's good. Great.
So just with those, all it takes is a little bump on the bottom and it turns it to standby again.
Okay.
A lot of times people just tap it with their little finger or something. And then wonder why. Yeah.
Okay, so you just press it on.
And you just press it.
Okay, great.
You had it. I heard it. You have to touch it again. There's a long press on your Okay.
There we go. Talking to the mic. I think panelists can just go ahead and sit down, and then Jay and Doug and myself will stand over here. Brave people in your seats. Thank you for sitting down. It's so interesting to see, like, when asked, who will just come to the seat, sit down, and who's kind of straggling in the back. It's a little bit of a human experiment to see how people filter in and out. No, I think you're smart because you're like, I want the comfortable chair, and so I am gonna go sit in it. There's only 2 of them, so. Yes, true. Yes, definitely. What's to a fertility?
Yeah, that's next.
Really fancy turkey pastry, yeah. So bringing some of the parameter controls. On their journey a little bit more. So there's some issues that black people aren't.
Okay, I won't publicly shame the people outside. We'll just start instead. Thanks everybody for coming. It's wonderful to see actually lots of familiar faces and lots of new faces. I'm Kate McAndrew. I'm a principal here at Bolt. By here at Bolt, I mean here, this lovely office where everyone is sitting. So we are an $82 million fund, venture fund. We back very early stage entrepreneurs, so we're often kind of writing them their first check. And amongst many categories that we invest in, we have been long-term investors and believers in kind of digital technology in the manufacturing and supply chain space, as well as digital design tools. So this is actually really fun because we're here doing this event with Autodesk. And when I first started at Bolt 5 years ago, we actually lived at Pier 9. So our startup sat at Pier 9. It was only 2 years ago that we opened this office. At the time, it was an artist in residency program, but it's been very cool to watch that program kind of transition over to a residency around manufacturing and to get to see some of the exciting things that they're doing. So with that, I'll tee it up to Jay to kind of talk a bit more about that, and then our other co-host, Doug from AMT.
Great, hi. I'm Jay Sassaman. So I'm running the industry engagement team for Autodesk in our technology centers focused on manufacturing. And so we're excited to be working with both of you to do an event like this. In part, we are driving a community at our technology centers that is poking at asking questions, exploring new technologies around what's next. Industry 4.0, digital thread, these are all things that we're talking about and thinking about all the time. And really our technology center, especially here, which is themed around manufacturing, is connecting both with our external folks who are startups, academics, or industry partners as part of the residency, but it's under the same roof as our Autodesk research teams. So we're looking at all of those things in parallel. And it makes for a very dynamic community to have residents who are coming in, working on their own projects in that space, and driving our own questions about what's coming. We're always looking for new residents to join that community. I think the easiest way to pitch that is to tell you to Google Autodesk Technology Centers, because the URL, who's going to remember that? But our program is really, it's dynamic. It's free. We provide software and access to all of our machining equipment. And also, being a part of that is really being a part of a community that's asking these questions about the future of manufacturing. So I think that's sort of the summary of where we are with the Autodesk Technology Centers. We have sites in Boston and Toronto also exploring future of construction and future of design. But since we're here for manufacturing, I think that's what matters the most. And so we're really excited to be partnering with other folks who are reaching other parts of that community. And we're all, I think, driving at some of these same questions. So Doug Woods, I'll introduce you as the president of the AMT. Excited to be working with you on this.
Thank you much, Jay. I think for me, this is super cool. So this is unbelievable space here. So Kate, thank you very much for having us here. I mean, when I started out, so I started in the tool and die industry, manufacturing stuff in upstate New York. And to think to have places like this that you can incubate super cool ideas, make it and hang with people in a space like this is unbelievable. And Jay and Autodesk are members of AMT. And so to be able to do stuff with Jay, the cool things they're doing over at Pier 9 is really fantastic, because we're all about accelerating what's happening with manufacturing and manufacturing technology specifically. That's AMT. AMT, I'm going to say this, and so I'm going to get past it real quick. It stands for the Association of Manufacturing Technology, and I hate the word association. I really hate it, because we're super cool. We are the coolest manufacturing technology organization you could ever imagine in the world. And the worst thing is to say the word association, because what do you think of? Like, right, dull, boring, kind of let's go to meetings once in a while. We're a really cool tech-based organization. We're all about how to accelerate manufacturing technology. And we do that kind of in just a couple different ways. We're really focused just on going to work every day at AMT and figuring out what can we do to help our members' sales go up or their costs go down. So I ran companies my whole life before coming to AMT, and as someone running a company, that's what you care about. So we make products and services that are going to do that. And we have two primary ways that we do that, trying to help our members every day. We focus on providing industry intelligence and market access. Industry intelligence, we get data scientists, business intelligence platforms, economists, industry analysts, figuring out how to get unique data information to help our members forge new markets and technologies. On the market access side of things, we run the biggest manufacturing technology show in the hemisphere, IMTS, every 2 years in Chicago, to bring a platform to bring the technology and products and users together to one super big event. 1.2 million square feet, 100,000 people. It's a great way to kind of share what's happening in the manufacturing tech space. And we have technology centers around the world. We have them in China, we have them in Brazil, we have them in Mexico, we have them in India. And we just opened up our neatest, cool little one here. We have a tech lab that we just opened up in San Francisco. Ryan Kelly, who's sitting right over there, is the general manager of that tech lab. And so we're trying to be incubated and set up around the world, helping our members accelerate the manufacturing tech space. And I got interested in this space, again, from being in the industry, running automation companies, and trying to solve different problems and create community in the space of advanced technologies. And so when I came to AMT, we had this idea of like, how do we start solving some of the problems like interoperability of devices and components and systems? Nothing existed, everything was proprietary. So we said, you know what, we need to create something. We worked with Dr. Patterson up at Berkeley, and we came up with something called MT Connect, the first free, open, extensible interoperability standard, kind of driving kind of the integration and creation of a community to solve problems. And we keep doing that with business intelligence platforms that we give away and kind of integrate for our members. We do it with our tech centers, we do it with our tech lab. So we're about figuring out how do we accelerate this space of manufacturing technology. And so when we come out here and see places like this, and people like you guys doing neat things in this space, we get really excited. So MT360 is our newest thing that we're coming out with next year, which is a bridging between our world, what I consider the manufacturing world I grew up in, and kind of the tech world, which is much more pervasive out here. So it's going to be in Santa Clara. And we're kind of putting together both really cool topics and as well as kind of a virtual factory to touch and see the things that integrate the usability of manufacturing technology in kind of a production-ready application. So you can look at all that stuff online when you go to AMT or MT360 online, and that's it for commercials, but I'm kind of excited about manufacturing. This is a cool place to be.
Thanks, Doug. All right, the panel. So we're going to keep it crisp, and then we're going to open it up for questions. Before we start, I'm kind of curious who's in the audience. So who works at a company that they would consider to be a startup? Okay, vast majority. I'm going to not ask the other side of that question. And whose company does something directly that is a technology for, or relates directly to manufacturing? Okay, interesting, awesome. That was our poll. The poll is over. So I'm really thrilled to get to sit down with these three panelists. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a moment, but I think what's really interesting about the people that are assembled is they're all residents at this Autodesk residency, so they have that kind of community in common, but they're working on really different projects. And I think it kind of showcases the breadth of what's going on around this concept of the digital thread, which we're gonna dig into. But mostly I just wanna hear about what you're up to. So maybe we'll start by just kind of going down the line and tell us, really who you are, what you make, and why we should care.
My name is Jesse Rosalia. I run a company called Bomber, and we build bill of materials automation plugins for CAD, Fusion 360, SolidWorks, and other platforms. I saw a problem running a technology side of a robotics company before I started this, where the tools for pulling data out of your CAD and producing a parts list are woefully inadequate, is sort of the polite company way of saying it. They're terrible. And we thought we could do better. And what I found working on Bomber is that it's not just that they're inadequate, it's that people are comfortable working in inefficient ways because there isn't anything better that they could see, touch, and put their hands on. And with Bomber, we give people the tools not only to automate those things to make them more efficient, we give them the tools to think of new process and new workflows that might drive from the engineer's desk that they couldn't have done otherwise.
Can you give like a specific use case example?
Yeah, as a matter of fact. So I'll give two. One basic one is we have a customer who just needed to pull a flat parts list from their robotics project to give to their in-house manufacturing, and we make that button clicks instead of several hours of their engineer's time. The other is people use Bomber to build. They had a woodworking shop. They had a problem where they recognized an opportunity for improvement where the design engineer, to achieve a specific finish on their furniture, knew what saws and blades to use, and they had no real easy mechanism to pass that into their existing BOM. So the shop person would end up having to go back to the engineer's desk and ask, hey, what did you want me to do to achieve this finish? They programmed all of that into Bomber, and now one button press after the engineer fills it out gets all of the shop instructions down to the shop.
Very cool. And what stage are you, real quick? Like how many people? Or...
Yeah. So it's me and one co-founder. We have about 60, 70 customers, about 100 paid seats. We're bootstrapped and growing slowly but surely.
Super cool, Jesse.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Chris.
Yeah, hi, I'm Chris. So I'm with the company Overview. We put cameras in factories and then use computer vision to supervise equipment so you can run it unattended with fewer errors and run longer. We typically put this into older factories where they hadn't turned over their machines in a long time, so we can kind of modernize the factory, add a lot of digital capabilities without them having to buy new equipment.
Awesome. Who's kind of your core constituency?
Well, so we've done a lot of products for like a niche vertical in manufacturing wire and cable, but really any like machine that's sort of doing the same thing over and over again, we can set up a camera that can kind of learn the pattern and start to recognize errors and start to provide useful data.
And do you sell it to the factory or do you sell it to the customer that's using the factory?
Factory.
To the factory. Awesome. Thanks, Chris. We here.
Hey everyone, my name is Mihir Shah. I help in a company called Inspect AR. We're an augmented reality tool for really anybody that interfaces or interacts with a circuit board. So right now we're mainly focused on the prototype electrical engineer in R&D. And the problem really came to surface when a group of co-founders and I have backgrounds in electrical engineering. We've all worked at companies like Tesla, Neuralink, Capital, SpaceX. And as a group, you share a mutual frustration with just how difficult it is to interface with the electronics. There's a lot of groups, a lot of startups, a lot of companies making it easier to design, easier to integrate that stuff with your bill of materials, easier to even get it manufactured at that process. But once the board lands on your desk, the process is still incredibly inefficient, it's error prone, it's very expensive. Just getting all the data in one place, figure out what's that resistor, what's that component, where does that wire go. You have to go to 3 different sets of files, and and if you didn't, you weren't the one to design it, or you're not intimately familiar with the board, it's very, very difficult to do that quickly, and you can rush respins of the board and spend thousands and thousands of dollars on what's generally the most expensive part of a hardware company's kind of budget, which is getting the actual PCBs made, especially at the prototype stage. So we help you kind of innovate and just do things a lot faster by having all the data in one place and being able to visualize any part of your board in real time without having access to the EDA tool or really needing your own set of design files through augmented reality.
And I forgot to ask Chris this, so we'll backtrack. But what stage is the company at?
You want me to go or just?
Yeah, you go first.
Sure.
We'll go back to Chris.
We're reasonably early. We have a small round of investment, and there's 5 of us. And we launched for like a month and a half, but building it for about a year and a half.
Congrats.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, so we're super early also. It's 4 of us. We have 3 customers, and they're very pilot sort of style customers where we're kind of back and forth with them and trying to get our product to work, the way they want, the way we want.
Awesome. Well, I think when Jay and I started talking about this event, she was introducing this idea of the digital thread. My first question was, what's that? And I think the truth is that it's a really big concept, a really aspirational concept that can show up in a lot of different ways, depending on what you're working on. And so I'm actually curious, since you guys are interacting with this concept and kind of in the context of the residency, could you kind of share how you think about the digital thread, maybe specifically with what you're working on and how that concept kind of interacts with what you're doing?
Sure, I'll start. Is that the mic? We're selling products that you take advantage of new technology and therefore just kind of have a lot of data associated with them. So we're really like adding a lot of data to the manufacturing phase of products, which is kind of part of the digital thread. Kind of adding more thread or adding more of a digital signature in the kind of early phase of a product. So when I think of the digital thread, it's that sort of arc of all the digital information that kind of is associated with something from the very beginning to the very end.
So for you, it's sort of taking an area in the supply chain or in the production that's a black box right now and adding kind of visibility into that area. Is that right?
Yeah, it's not sort of the core of our business, but it is like a kind of offshoot of what happens is that by using new technology, we are generating a lot of data. People would be wise to kind of stitch that data with all the other data that's associated with the thing that they're working on.
Got it.
So by default, our application kind of requires the files that are used in the rest of the process. You almost have to have some consistency through that. So if anything, it kind of forces a digital thread to really start and be consistent. Like we take the manufacturing outputs of your native design files to overlay onto your physical board and debug your design. So all the parts from design through manufacturing, through debug, rework, and then post-production assembly, things like that, are all involved in kind of what our tool is based around. And so, the question is more how do we kind of integrate all that stuff with our particular tool? That would be the shortest answer for Inspect AR. We kind of require you to have clean files, and your bill of materials should be cleaned up. So integrations with people like Bomber are really interesting and important to us to make sure that things are consistent throughout.
The digital thread, as best I can gather and as best I understand, is really all about getting the right information to the right people at the right time in the manufacturing process. And that's kind of how bills of material are thought about traditionally. Is you get a little bit of information from the designer's desk, you get a little bit of information from the engineer who puts it together. The procurement, supply chain folks then add their sauce on top, and then it kind of goes down from there. I think it's actually, at least from what we've seen from people who've used Bomber, it's missing a piece. The definition is missing a piece. It should be the right information from the right person at the right time, to the right person at the right time. And so the example I gave earlier about a company saw that it was advantageous for the engineer, the designer, to say, use this saw, then that saw, then this sander, then that sander, and drive the shop instructions from their desk. That's the right information at the right time, or from the right person at the right time, driven to the right person at the right time. And I think that's how we see our involvement within the digital thread, is enabling people to basically break the stream and establish connectivity. You're still flowing information downstream, but it might be information that is specified earlier than you would have otherwise done.
Can I get like a thumbs up, thumbs down as to who feels like they have a sense of what we mean by digital thread? We're feeling good. Great. Jay's not so sure. It's your turn, Jay. What do you want from me? Cool. Well, I think, at Bolt, I get the privilege of working with early stage companies every day, and I think kind of regardless of what you're working on, there's the difficulty of raising capital, of hiring great people, of getting early customers, finding revenue. But I also think when you're working within particular industries or technologies, they hold their own promises and their own particular hurdles. So as kind of early stage entrepreneurs really trying to innovate in manufacturing in the digital thread, I'd love to understand what's a key obstacle that you see, and then what's a key opportunity that you see about this moment.
Maybe I want to start.
I can also share.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, so to me, the main obstacle, and just as a point of reference, our family business actually, in the background is one of the largest printed circuit board manufacturing and assembly shops, arguably the largest in the prototype stage in the US today. And the biggest obstacle is we still have not done a great job of fully understanding the customer expectation and being very transparent throughout the process about where your boards are, what the order procurement process is like. When we have missing things from the bill of materials, interesting stat, 99% of bill of materials have some error that slows something down, whether it's part number doesn't match the Gerber footprint, doesn't match the MPN or whatever, something. But I wouldn't really put that on the consumer. We need to do a better job on the manufacturing side, being very, very clear about what exactly it is that we're requiring from customers, how we kind of parse that information, and where that information goes on the manufacturing floor. So that's just more for the manufacturing side, and just also understand that everyone else here also orders the rest of their stuff off Amazon and Apple, and then you go to a manufacturer and it's like, wait a day or a couple hours for a quote, and then where's my board? Where's it going to ship? Things like that. So that's more of the reference on that.
Yeah. So for us, the prompt manufacturing is a incredibly industry. There's so much, and especially for technology, it's so complicated and so big, and there's incredible challenges with individual processes and huge complicated systems, and there's just so many opportunities for technology to really improve efficiency and help make things cheaper and work better, and so it's kind of a really exciting field from that point of view. Where it becomes really hard is that everything is very different. Even two factories making the exact same product can make them totally differently. Different era machines, different systems that are kind of homegrown. And so to make a product that sort of works kind of over and over again and is repeatable can be kind of challenging. You often can get sucked into very custom work within the manufacturing field. So that, all this promise, so many great opportunities to push technology in and improve things, but a lot of pitfalls around making something that is kind of universal that can work in various places within manufacturing.
So there are obviously a lot of challenges small entrepreneurs will face, innumerable numbers. I think for us, so we deal mostly, our first point of contact within a customer engagement is usually with the mechanical engineer who might be using our stuff. And we found that it's a great thing if you can convince them or if they see the value in what you're doing, and it is a frustrating thing if they don't. It seems like an obvious statement, but if you can educate them or if they understand the problem that you're trying to solve, then it's a wonderful conversation. And if it's not, then they will show you their 50-tab Excel spreadsheet with cross-linked formulas and a database call and tell you how much they hate it. But that's their process, and that's what they got to do. And so there is some challenge around showing, okay, well, I understand that's your process. Here maybe is a way you can do it better with fewer errors and without having to maintain the 50-tab spreadsheet. That's probably one of the bigger challenges that we face, is just getting people to abandon what they're comfortable with. And company trust, we're small, so understanding that they can trust us, that we're going to be around to support the software is huge. We pride ourselves on being very customer service oriented, because I think that's the only way we can convince people that we're not just selling the snake oil.
Yeah, I think, behavior change, even if you're changing towards a brighter, more efficient future, is difficult. So I feel that. So on the kind of positive side, I'm curious, if you were to achieve everything that you want to achieve with your companies, like how would you imagine the world would be different, right? The world of your customers, the world of manufacturing, if we fast forward 5-10 years.
So I think you could make more things cheaper and more easily, and with more automation, fewer, just kind of make anything could be made as sort of cheaply and kind of easily as possible. Basically.
The whole mission of like Inspect AR is to fundamentally improve the way anybody interacts with the circuit board. But in a perfect world, hardware would really, you'd be able to iterate almost at the speed of software. Meaning you're able to actually design hardware incredibly fast, get the inputs from Altium or Eagle, whatever EDA tool you use, and be in real time understanding the price changes and time changes on the manufacturing side. When it goes straight to manufacturing, it's instant, it's clear, you know what's going on, your board's going to ship. It's going to ship faster and more reliably with a higher yield. And when you get on your board or on your desk, you instantly are able to kind of analyze and inspect and see any problem in real time the second you put it under a camera and get the answers and solutions and how you fix that along with substitute parts or where that's going. So that's kind of, we're working on all three pieces right now through all the different businesses, but from design through manufacturing through debug, that process you're guided along the whole way and given suggestions and improvements so you can iterate really, really fast on hardware.
I think if Bomber is wildly successful, an engineer would never have to say, oh, I accidentally sent the wrong version of the bomb, or, oh, give me a second, I need to update the quantity, or, oh, crap, I forgot that I just changed from M2 to M3 screws and I missed that one underneath there. Because we would deduplicate the sources of truth that people have to manage. And then beyond that, like our goal is get out of the way, spend less time on your bomb. But it really is spend less time on the things that are clerical in nature, so that you can get back to actually designing and engineering cool stuff.
Awesome. I think with that, we'll open it up to questions, and I will mic shuffle. So, questions?
I just had a clarifying question. I don't think I have a sense for what the user experience of your product is, and it made it hard to understand some of the answers.
Okay. Yeah, so let me give you a really quick example. Are you guys familiar with like hardware design, electronics in that regard? Okay, so let's say you had an LED that wasn't blinking up on your PCB. So what would you do in that case? If you had an LED that wasn't blinking, that's all the context I'm really giving you, what would you do? Okay. Okay, but how would you find out where that trace is leading to, or pin on the micro if you can't see it, or if it's on an internal layer? What would you probably open up the schematic and layout and go through the wiring diagram? What if you need to design the board or you don't have a license to Altium or whatever? So all these, the point is all this information is fragmented. So in one place with Inspect AR, you can hover your phone or an external camera and in real time, just click on a component, see the metadata, what the pinout is, click, show me where it's going to goes to the rest of the board.
What would you do if the mic stopped working?
My voice is loud enough. Okay, great. So basically, you can trace things back, but you don't need to go through a wiring diagram and then go context switch again to your layout and then go context switch again to the physical board. It's just more intuitive engineering. You see where things go in real time. Basically, it just brings all the info in one place, and you can also assign work tasks to technicians that may highlight to say, recreate this problem, do this, do that. So basically, anybody that interfaces and interacts with your hardware exactly as you intended. There's no ambiguity, there's no need to shuffle through other papers. Maybe someone else designed it. It's all in one place for you to intuitively figure out what's going on with the board, inspect it, and change it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, while the next person asks a question, we can see if you guys can fix the microphone. I think they can.
Yeah,
All right.
Maybe your mic.
Maybe it's my fault. Who has the next question?
So I'm wondering if there's an agreed markup protocol to keep track of all this information, because I can imagine it going down the stream and people wanting to reuse it. And then the second question, which is at the end of sort of the manufacturing process as a consumer, and is there a way that the digital thread can be sort of kept in some way so that end of life can be managed in a different way?
Who wants to take it? Jesse?
Sure. I'll just start it off. So there are, at least from bills of materials and parts list perspective, there are a lot of proprietary standards for getting data into enterprise systems that manage the resources. A lot of people, as a result, tend to fall back on comma-separated value files and Excel files. Excel is what I would call is the closest to a lingua franca that we have. And it hurts me to say that, but
It's very tweetable.
but that's kind of the stage that we're in. To answer the other side of the question, I might defer to my other panel mates, but my understanding again of the digital thread is it would extend into asset management and then end of life sunsetting. Because if you don't, then you haven't fully closed the loop on your manufacturing processes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. It's not sort of part of my business, but you know, somebody would have to really make a conscious effort to keep track of all that data throughout the whole life, which probably is the person creating the product. But you know, maybe some other companies could start a way to help people do that or something.
We're seeing a lot of the large, especially consumer electronics manufacturers, getting pressure from their constituents to wanting to see more sustainability, but what does that mean? So I think that this is certainly some conversations that we've had around the way that the digital thread can help, you know, that producer of the object that the consumer cares about feel like they're getting this is the battery. Managed through end of life. So I think that's totally a huge area of interest right now, especially in the global 2000s. And I think any way that we can, you know, bring more visibility into that at the manufacturing level will bring a lot of leverage to those companies. So definitely something that's being thought about and talked about, not necessarily on their panel, but I think it's a great question there. Who else? Matt.
I've got a question. So you're all working on bringing really interesting new early stage tools into the ecosystem of manufacturing and design. I'm curious which tools that you use as you build your companies you found really valuable, or said, I wish I knew about this tool resource, you know, 6 months ago. It's really made my life easier, and things you might share that might help the community.
Me first again?
Or you can pass it down.
All the Autodesk products.
I mean, as corny as it might be to say, given the context, yeah. I mean, having a like for me, having a platform like Fusion 360 to integrate onto, or other, you know, CAD packages and whatnot. My answer is going to be very software oriented because I'm building software. The biggest problem that I face as a software developer building tools for engineers is the fragmented nature of APIs and languages and platforms to address. Everyone, you know, CAD is like it's like a favorite taste, right? I like Inventor, I like Fusion, I like SolidWorks or CATIA or whatever. And so to really solve problems for everyone, you kind of have to cast your net wide. Unfortunately, that might mean I have to support 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 products. And so what I've learned is seek out ways of writing once and running many times as a way of supporting this community. I wish I would have known that 3 years ago when I started, because my code base would be a lot different.
Yeah, there's a crazy amount of tools. That's one thing that I've been struck by as we've worked on it. But I don't know, project management ones like Notion and Airtable have been useful. And then like a lot of the sales support stuff, CRM kind of things. But I think with all the tools, like you kind of need to like know what you're doing, and the tool itself is not really going to like solve your problems. It's more like being logical and thinking about it, and then figuring out, you know, what the tool can kind of fill in that you couldn't just do sort of on your own. So nothing's like a silver bullet.
Yeah, there's a lot of like low friction tools you can quickly kind of get. Oh, it's only $20 a month, but that kind of adds up. So generally, if you can do it yourself, I recommend that. But HubSpot has been really awesome for us in like managing some of the customers and the demos and all that. And then Octopart is another really awesome company. They're acquired by Altium. They're basically a bill of materials, pricing, manufacturing part number, everything aggregator. So DigiKey, Mauser, Avnet, Arrow, everybody, all the major parts distributors for electronic components. You put in your bill of materials, it'll aggregate all that and show you in real time. So it's just a nice way to kind of get all your pricing and everything else on one point for circuit board bill of materials. And we use that in our manufacturing businesses as well, so up to part, absolutely.
Okay.
Awesome. Doug?
Not to seem like a cheesy commercial guy, but so just in reference to that as well, I mean, from the standpoint of what AMT, and remember, it's not the association, it's the really coolest manufacturing technology organization you've ever heard of in your life. We have a lot of things for startup companies. If we have a startup category, it's $500, and I know for some startups, I was talking to a couple guys, I won't mention any names, where even $500 for a startup could be too much. So anybody that's in this room that's a startup company, now I'll give you a free 1-year membership, and you can see what it is that AMT does for you. But essentially, we have a complete, as I was saying, industry intelligence group. So we have researchers, analysts, so any market sector you want to get in, any technology, how many machines of a certain type, what market growth is happening with a sector or a product or a type, access to the OEMs, all the people that make all the stuff that you might want to use, all of the equipment from the robots to the software to the systems, the automation. Those are all the members. International tech centers, if you want to be able to figure out how to put a person into a lab in one of the centers around the world as you're trying to break into a different spot. All those things are things we do for people every day. So to the extent we can help you, part of what I do in life is help accelerate manufacturing technology and manufacturing. So take a look at what AMT has. If you think that's something that could be interesting helping you as startup companies using any of those services, then just come see me or see Ryan or see Travis, that good looking guy back over there in the corner. And we'd be happy to set you up for 1 year. And if it turns out it wasn't worth it, please tell me that, because I'm doing something dramatically wrong, right? Because my only job in life is making your sales go up or your costs go down. But if it is useful to you, you gotta pay the $500 the next year.
Startups love free software. Next question.
I have a question. I'm also holding this thing here. Take this.
Quick poll from the audience. For those that feel like they've got a good handle on what the digital thread, or enter your preferred jargon, on a scale to 0 to 5, 5 being the most mature, where do you think that the industry is? Okay, we've got a pretty low average. I would say the average is somewhere between 1 and 2. So now a question to the panelists. You all are attacking one link in the value chain for trying to make the digital thread more connected. Call another link in the value chain out as you think the most problematic, the biggest, scariest problem that no one's really doing a good job of solving right now. And yeah, and I would say anyone from the audience that thinks that they know what that might be as well. But I'd be curious to hear what you think the scariest part of the not digital yet thread is.
We'll take one from the panel and one from the audience.
I think the scariest is actually the scope of this whole manufacturing landscape in terms of a business. These are largely privately owned companies that are almost entirely owner operated. So, I mean, in the 90s and early 2000s, very profitable. And you come to now, they didn't reinvest back into their own companies because you're making so much money in the late 90s and early 2000s. You didn't scale up with a lot of the technology, especially at the prototyping, low volume stage, not just for PCBs, but even when you get into injection molding and things like that. And so what's happening is a lot of these guys are going out of business. Good example, 2008, there was about 2,000 circuit board quick turn manufacturers in the US. Today, a decade later, there's less than 200. So 90% reduction of the supply, yet the demand is at least 4 times higher. So from any sort of economic model, it doesn't make any sense at all. Largely can be attributed to China, but also people couldn't stay in business because they don't reinvest capital into their own business. And so when you're looking from a consumer side, that's difficult for you to now navigate. Who's actually going to build my stuff on time? Who's going to go out of business in the next 6 months? And that's happening all the time. So knowing who's actually making your stuff, if they're not brokering it, and how are they doing financially is pretty important right now. It's something to actually consider, because a lot of people doing your manufacturing today may not be in business in 12 months or whatever.
That's a really interesting point. And there was one thought from the audience, so we're just going to mix it up here.
Yeah, so I've had a lot of trouble with supply chain. You all have had frustrations with it. But we can be very integrated in terms of our digital infrastructure. But then we hand it to like a machine shop or a supplier, they're like, well, can you give us like a 2D drawing and we'll work from there. So there is that handoff that also suppliers and machine shops need to be integrated into this, right?
Awesome.
I have a short but strong opinion.
I love short, strong opinions.
So this is actually, it's near and dear to my heart, both because it's a friction that I face trying to get people to be aware of and use Bomber, but also it's just a philosophy I've learned from rolling out technology throughout my career is it might not be a bad thing that the shop requires 2D drawings. The bad thing is that like it's a pain in the ass for you to produce those 2D drawings, to get into the shop and then hand them back and forth and so on. So I mean, just sort of like a thought for people to consider is maybe the end product doesn't need to be modernized, digitized, or maybe the machine shop doesn't need to change so much as we need to change the way we're delivering the data to the machine shop and receiving updates back. That might be an easier problem to fix than teaching a 40-year-on-the-job veteran machinist to not use drawings.
The right information from the right person at the right time to the right person. I think we'll do one last question. I think I saw a hand up front.
Specifically for overview AI, could you give an example of like your canonical use case, like the scenario you see this being the most valuable to a client?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of products for the wire and cable industry, and so they have these machines that run for like 6 to 8 hours. All you need to do is load them, and then they just kind of produce cable over and over again. It's some braiding or taping or wrapping kind of application. And occasionally there are errors, but pretty infrequently. So you either have to have somebody watch the whole time, or you have to just risk kind of coming back in a half hour and finding a lot of poorly built cables. So our camera just watches right as it kind of is made and can spot the errors and either shut down the machine or notify somebody. So that's like a really discrete use case. But again, it's like machines where they do the same thing over and over again, and they're just kind of building that same thing sort of repeatedly, and occasionally they have deviations, and there's no digital signature for the deviation existing in the equipment. Those are kind of the use cases that work really well for us.
Awesome, thanks. Well, no one's kicking anyone out, so feel free to stick around. There's more drinks and food, and thank you to our panelists for being here. Appreciate it.